This week's video is not one that I planned to make. I had a completely different shoot planned out, and then at the last second I had this other vehicle made available to me, and it's one that I'm really excited about, and more excited about than the original shoot that I had planned. And part of that excitement comes from the fact that I have kind of a personal connection with these things. I spent a lot of time around them as a child. They mean a lot to me. I've always thought they should do well, and I am really excited to see that it's been rejuvenated, it's had new life kind of breathed upon it, and I think it's going to do really well. I think it's going to become the vehicle that I always wanted it to be. And that vehicle is this, the 2024 Ford Ranger. Now, I already covered this at Ford's launch event back in March, but now that it's here on home soil and I get to spend more time with it, I want to take a minute to make this video and walk you guys through what Ford has done with this thing, because I really like it. I think they've absolutely nailed the mission statement. So let's see what they've done with this thing. Now, the first thing I want to bring up is the styling. And I don't normally like to talk about styling when I'm doing these videos. I'd rather just let the camera do the talking. But I think Ford has really got this right. Styling a mid-size truck is always a little tricky. It's an exercise in balancing big, tough machismo energy of the full-size trucks and a sensible shape that actually works and fits in garages and parking spots. And I think this nails that well. But it takes more than just a pretty face to be competitive in this segment, because everything is brand new. The Nissan Frontier was refreshed a couple years ago. The General Motors Chevy Colorado and GMC Canyon Twins are brand new as of a couple years ago. The Toyota Tacoma, kind of the segment leader and its own institution unto itself, is brand new as of this year. And now the Ranger is new. And Ford has done a lot to make this truck competitive with those. So this truck has a brand new fully boxed high-strength steel frame. The front and rear track are wider. The rear shocks have been moved outboard of the frame for better ride comfort and better handling. They've gone to a composite leaf spring in the rear to help trim a bit of weight off. They've gone to an aluminum control arm in the front, again to help shave some weight. The body is still steel to help control costs, but the hood is aluminum to shave a little bit of weight off. All that adds up to a truck that, despite being bigger and having way more going on than the outgoing Ranger, is only about 150 pounds heavier. And then on the business end of this truck, Ford has implemented some pretty cool stuff that I appreciate, because a lot of it is just simple, smart engineering that's hard to argue with. There's no gimmicks, there's no power split folding tailgate, there's no pop-out steps. It's just smart, simple stuff. For example, the steps to access the tailgate. They're huge, easy enough to fit 2 feet into comfortably, and they can support 300 pounds. Moving to the tailgate itself, Ford has integrated a torsion spring in the base of the tailgate to help damp its opening so it doesn't slam and flop open on you, and it makes it easy to close, because it acts as a passive assist without the use of any powered accessory that could break or fail on you. Going back into the tailgate, there is clamp points on the end to help secure things. There's a rudimentary ruler here instead of the full trigonometry board that's on the F-150. And then there are 6 tie-down points in the bed to secure whatever you're trying to move. Another little engineering thing that will have a big effect on the end user of this truck is that by moving the shocks outboard, they are able to widen the space between the wheel wells. It is now 48 inches. So you can move a sheet of drywall or a sheet of plywood flat in the bed without having to finagle it. So that's big. And then the bed length, they've gotten rid of the 6-foot bed option. Every Ranger is now a 5-foot box and a crew cab, because that's what 95% of the last ones were. And they figured, let's just focus our effort on doing this one body style right, instead of doing a bunch of different things. And then for power, there's a 12-volt outlet and a 120-volt outlet, which is good for up to 400 watts. And then payload on this thing is 1,875 pounds, and then towing is 7,500. Not bad. This truck is actually built to work. So they've done a lot of work underneath the truck to update it, and they've done a ton of work inside to transform this space, which is a huge upgrade. On the last Ranger, the cabin was kind of a pain point because it was sort of a dated product when it was launched here, and it didn't really get a ton better. This is a big step up. It's a lot nicer. So on this loaded Lariat model, there's a 2-tone color scheme going. We got sandstone, beige, and black leather with metallic accents around the vents and on the doors to kind of brighten things up a little bit. The shifter and steering wheel are leather wrapped. The seats are nice and comfortable. They're 10-way power adjusted. It's a comfy, nice place to sit. There's a ton of room in the door pockets for a smaller water bottle and a bigger water bottle here. In the center console, there's a sunglass tray, a storage tray, a wireless charging tray, a couple of big cup holders, lots of room in the center console with a removable tray in there. There is a upper and lower glove box. There's a little storage tray here, It's all really practical and well thought out. And to that end, at the press event, Ford said they went out of their way to make sure that all the materials that they chose for this space were durable and washable in recognition of the kind of like hard lives these trucks are going to lead. These are supposed to be work trucks. And because these aren't the big flexi boy trucks, they actually are probably going to work harder than the big trucks. So they've gone to some length to make sure this space is going to be hard wearing and keep looking this good for a long time. And on the technology side, there is a all digital gauge cluster that is lifted more or less directly out of the F-150. And on that topic, this truck also gets Blue Cruise, Ford's hand-free driving function, and the trailer backup function out of the F-150 as well. So really nice little quality of life things. The main screen is a 14-inch portrait affair that's running Ford's Sync 4. It's easy to use, it's easy to figure out. It's not the snappiest system on the market, but it does work pretty well. The animations are pretty nice. There's a ton you can do with it. It's easy to figure out. And I especially appreciate that there's some redundancy with physical controls. So I have an array of physical climate controls and a volume knob under it, as well as having those functions on the screen as well. Smart, pragmatic stuff that gives you options on how you want to handle things. And the Bang & Olufsen sound system sounds great. So the captain's chair of this truck is really nice. The dashboard is well laid out, it's attractive, the materials feel like quality. They got this right. Another thing they did well is the back seat of this truck, and the rear seating on these mid-size trucks is always a bit of a struggle because there's a compromise between trying to keep the truck, mid-size and having a decent sized bed. What Ford's done here works pretty well. So I'm sitting beside myself and I'm really long-legged and I've still got a good amount of leg room here. Feels like it's the best in the segment. It's comfy, it's supportive. This is good. So there's a good amount of room for passengers, and then there's also a good amount of room for stuff. This seat folds up and out of the way quite easily and opens up this area to either be a semi-flat floor for loading or extra storage bins. Really well thought out. Ford's done their homework on this. And then speaking of homework, Ford clearly noticed that there was a weakness in this segment and went right for it, and that's in the powertrain. Now, the Ranger that I drove at the launch event in the spring was powered by Ford's 2.3-liter four-cylinder EcoBoost engine. That engine's been around for a long time now. It's a stout unit, it's a known quantity, and I felt in this truck it was more than adequate. With 270 horsepower and 310 foot-pounds of torque, the truck moves along pretty well, and it's surprisingly quiet and smooth and refined, I think more so than its four-cylinder competition. And it bears mentioning that regardless of whether you get the V6 or the four-cylinder, your towing and payload are the same. Both trucks can work just as hard. The V6 just doesn't have to work as hard to get the job done. And that's because it is the 2.7-liter twin-turbo 6 that is used in the bigger F-150 that puts out 315 horsepower and 400 foot-pounds of torque. And in this truck, it helps it move along really well. This engine gives this truck a pretty big leg up in this segment because no one else is offering a turbo 6. Toyota's new Turbo 4 with the hybrid system works pretty well and puts up good numbers. And GM's 2.7-liter high output engine also puts up pretty good numbers, but they don't feel like this and they have to work harder to do it. This is a nice engine, it's smooth, it's quiet, it's pretty fuel efficient. I'm averaging like 10.5 liters per 100. So it's got lots of power. It can make any big job feel pretty effortless. And that's important in a truck. You want to feel like the truck isn't working too hard, like it has more reserve capacity, and this delivers that. And perhaps more than that is that this is a stout engine. Ford has made millions of these 2.7-liter units in F-150s, and it's kind of colloquially known amongst Ford techs that I've spoken to, the 2.7. These are tough units. So that's all well and good, but how about we go take this thing for a drive? This truck drives
Then no, I have not.
Okay. Well, anyway, we're gonna move on now. All right. Mike Gorley, jump in here, or start
This
maybe.
doesn't feel like a small truck. It's nice and roomy. These seats are excellent. They're very comfortable. There's lots of adjustability. The driving position is excellent. Visibility is terrific. Like, just your basic ergonomics are pretty spot on. Your controls are easy to reach, easy to use. Everything is logically laid out. The materials feel good. This is just a nice truck. It's just well executed. It feels like they took the effort that usually goes into the F-150 and just stretched it over here. And it's all the better for it, right? You got the same Blue Cruise, which works really well. You got the same off-road modes because this has the FX4 off-road package. And they'll work really well. So that FX4 package, along with the variable drive modes for mud, sand, snow, etc., also includes firmer springs and shocks and a electronically locking 373 rear end to help acceleration and towing as well. And it also has Goodyear Wrangler all-terrain tires. And despite it being on firmer suspenders, it doesn't ride firm at all. It rides like a truck, but it's not harsh at all. It is pretty comfortable, it's quiet, it's well isolated, and the chassis shudders you would normally feel in a body-on-frame vehicle are almost non-existent. This is really well set up, it's really solid, it's very comfortable. And then on the topic of how this thing drives, I'm almost inclined to say it feels like an F-150, but I feel like saying that almost does it a disservice, because in one sense, yes, it does feel kind of like just a smaller F-150, because Ford puts so much effort into making sure that that truck feels right, making sure the steering feels right, the brakes feel right, the throttle response feels right. Ford's been very good about making the F-150 just feel natural. You get in and it's easy to drive without being too easy. It still feels substantial. And they've applied that here. But I think it's kind of a disservice to say that this just feels like a smaller F-150, because it handles so well. It drives great. It's got a ton of power with this engine in it. The steering is, for a truck, actually excellent. It's pretty communicative. It's linear. It's not overly sharp. It's not dull. It's not floating. It's not pondering. The chassis is really tight and well composed. It's remarkably well balanced for a truck. It handles great, to a point where I feel like if Ford made a performance version of this truck that was lower and stiffer, I think it would actually be a lot of fun. But even in this guy's right now, it drives great. It's fun to chuck around, and when you're not playing with it, it rides great. And then this 2.7 liter twin turbo V6, it moves this truck along pretty well. Oh, that's fast. Yeah, it's a very healthy amount of power for a truck this size. And not that, I don't mean that in a way to at all disparage the four-cylinder. I really genuinely felt it was more than adequate for 95% of people and applications. It's perfectly fine. But this is just more. And you know, they say less is more is good, but imagine how much better more is, right? And that's what this truck is. It feels great. The 10-speed automatic, to be honest, I forgot about it, which is perfect. That's fine. That's exactly what I want an automatic transmission to do. Just get out of the way. Do your job diligently, quietly, and get out of the way. And it does that here. It's smart. It's well calibrated. There's no awkward shifts. It's not clunky. It just works, and that's perfect. It's refined. It's nice. This is a remarkably well-composed, well-mannered truck that still feels like a truck. It's just firm enough. It's solid enough. They've got it set up such that it's very well-mannered and very easy to drive, but it doesn't feel like a compromise. It doesn't feel like, oh, you got the little one, you got the baby truck. This feels like a serious, honest-to-God truck that's ready to go out and work and play, and it doesn't feel like a cop-out. It's not just the baby truck. Oh, I did think of one thing to complain about with this truck. The shifter, it's like a nub-style shifter, and the amount of times I went to put this truck in a reverse and I just slammed it into park, it was pretty frustrating. And it's a minor little thing, and if they incorporated like some kind of detent into it to make maybe a little bit of a stop at reverse, that would be really nice. But that's the only real complaint I have about this truck, and I think that's pretty good. It looks great, it drives great, it has all the tech you could want, it's got the cameras, it's got the adaptive cruise, it's got the hands-free driving, it's got the towing amenities that make all that so much easier. Like, it has everything you could want a truck to do without a lot in the way of gimmicks. It's just an honest, well thought out, practical work truck that drives great. It has room for the stuff you want to do, it has the capability to do the things you need to do, and it's just nice along the way. And one of the biggest things that it has going for it is pricing. These trucks start at around $44,000 for a base model truck, and this one, loaded. This is a Lariat luxury truck with the FX4 off-road package and the upgrade turbo V6 engine that really sets it apart from its competition, and it rings in at $60,000. To put that in perspective, the GMC Canyon Denali that I had last year was 63. A comparably, roughly spec'd Toyota Tacoma with its upgrade hybrid powertrain is mid-60s. So Ford's gone really aggressive with this. They've gone out of their way to try and deliver more for the dollar. It feels like they took the effort that they put into the F-150 that they already had in the F-150 and finally applied it to the Ranger. This doesn't feel like a compromise. It doesn't feel like a cop-out product. It doesn't feel like, oh, I wish they did this. It's just, yeah, here's all the good stuff, and it's in this package. Come get it. And they really got this right. This is so impressive. For DoubleClutch.ca magazine, I'm Nathan Leipzig. Thanks for watching.